Stick a fork in the New York Rangers. They are done. We are tearing this team to shreds after the latest disaster piece of a performance against the Calgary Flames.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1271 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, yeah, just another day at the office for the New York Rangers, just the latest embarrassing performance, the latest no-compete game in a season that is absolutely chock full of them. Yet another contender for worst loss of the season. They've got to be in double digits for games like this throughout this entire campaign. The Rangers have now played 69 games this season. There've got to be at least a cool 15 games that the Rangers just did not show any fight whatsoever, did not show any sort of compete level. And for a team that, in theory, was fighting for its playoff lives last night, they just certainly didn't play like it. And their opponent, the Calgary Flames, they were in a very similar position as the Rangers. Just outside of the playoff picture looking in are the Flames. And they came out and competed and did what they did to get the 2 points. Probably didn't hurt their cause that the Rangers just didn't feel like playing hockey last night. But we're going to sort of go in chronological order here today. Don't worry, we're going to get to the game in due time here, and we're going to basically give these guys the performance review that they all deserve after a night like that. Every single New York Ranger that played in that game last night, not named Igor Shesterkin, should be absolutely embarrassed and ashamed for what went on that hockey rink. It was absolutely atrocious. They were being booed by the end of the game, and deservedly so. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I want to start with actually a decision that was made before this game. Got a lot of people talking for sure. We saw Brennan Othmann, a healthy scratch in favor of Juuso Parssinen. And I tweeted out before this game that, at some point pretty soon here, and the time is now, we are going to need to talk about the Rangers handling, or more appropriately, their mishandling of Brennan Othmann, because this is getting into a pretty dicey situation here. We are talking about a guy who is the Rangers' first-round pick. He was the first selection made of the Chris Drury GM era, and somebody who was on fire for the Wolfpack before he was called up. You would think a player like that would deserve it a little bit better than playing 9 minutes a night on the fourth line, night after night after night, and then being a healthy scratch for Juuso Parssinen, who was basically just a throw-in for one of the Rangers' trade deadline moves that they made. And, a general consensus that kind of stemmed from my comment on social media, on Twitter, was a couple people made this joke, but it's not even really a joke. It's a accurate statement of fact, is, oh, what do you mean just Othmann? Because I said we have to talk about how the Rangers have handled Othmann, and some people were pointing out that we need to talk about how the Rangers have handled all their young players, all their prospects, all their homegrown talent over the last however many years you want to go back at this point. And you're absolutely right about that. The Rangers do not exactly have a sparkling track record when it comes to developing their homegrown prospects. There are certain players that they just never should have drafted in the first place, whether we're talking about Kravtsov, Elias Anderson, Nils Lundqvist. You can throw him in there. I mean, at least with Lundqvist, they fleeced the Stars into giving them a first rounder. That might be the best move that Chris Drury has made in his tenure as GM, somehow getting a first rounder for Nils Lundqvist. But those guys never should have been drafted. They were all mistakes. And then you've got guys that have all contributed at least a little bit, but have not come close to reaching their full potential, whether that's Alexis Lafreniere, really the whole kid line. I mean, you could throw Hedel and Kakko in there too. I realize they're no longer with the team, obviously, but you could throw the two of them into that mix as well. Keandre Miller is another one, and there's other names. I don't want to spend all day going through the entire checklist. That's a deep dive for a different day, but I want to focus in on Othmann here. Again, he is scratched for Juuso Parssinen, who, once again, was the throw-in, or one of the throw-ins for several of the trades that the Rangers made on deadline day. And I'll make another point that a lot of you guys echoed on Twitter, after I made the initial comment about Brennan Othmann being a healthy scratch and how the Rangers have been handling him. Very simple point. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out, but I'll throw it out there anyway. If this is how the Rangers are going to use Brennan Othmann, then he does not need to be on the NHL roster at this time. Personally, I feel like he deserves more of a chance. I feel like he deserves more ice time. I feel like he should be in the top 9 at this point. But if they're not going to do that, then there's no point in having him waste away on the 4th line. There's no point in having him waste away with 9 minutes, because all you're doing, or being a healthy scratch in the case of last night, because what you're doing is you're basically just stunting his growth. He was just starting to find it with the Hartford Wolfpack. Othman's had a little bit of a tough season in the AHL, but he recently came back from injury, caught fire. I have the stats written down here somewhere. 13 games, his last 13 games with the Wolfpack, Brennan Othmann had 9 goals and 2 assists. And you've seen how lifeless this Ranger team has been for the majority of the entire season. I mean, and last night was certainly no exception. So you would think that the Rangers would be chopping at the bit and just dying to stick a player like Brennan Othmann into the lineup, somebody that plays with some snarl and some toughness and some edge and some nastiness. And nope, let's make him a healthy scratch and put the journeyman random player that we got at the trade deadline into the deadline instead of him. And here's something else that I'll throw out there as it pertains to Brennan Othmann and his usage with the Rangers since he's been called up. And I think the everydayers will back me up on this. I said multiple times this offseason, going into the year, when obviously, we're in training camp, we're getting into the preseason, we're trying to figure out who's going to make this team and who's better off starting the season at the AHL. I said multiple times that I was okay if Brennan Othmann and Brett Berard, either one of them or both of them, were to make the team at a training camp. If they wanted to start either of these guys on the 4th line to begin the season, I would be okay with that. First couple of games, sure. You know what? They both play physical enough game. They both play with enough edge that I think as 4th liners to begin their NHL career, that would be fine. But my hope was that in short order, they would move up the lineup. And that just hasn't happened. Brennan Othmann has spent, I believe, every single game that he's been in the lineup on the 4th line. And again, averaging about 9 minutes per night. And Brett Berard, by the way, he's out there on the 4th line with Brodzinski and Rempe in this game. So they're not exactly too keen on promoting these guys up the lineup. I feel like, after a few games, you got to move these guys up or they really just shouldn't be there. And Brennan Othmann at this point, I mean, I don't know. Do you send him back to Hartford? If he's going to be a healthy scratch for more than one game, then I think I would certainly do that, because there's no point in having this guy watch from the press box every single night. And, I also have to wonder, and not even just wonder, but actually throw out the idea, this is probably what happened as far as why Othmann was a healthy scratch in this game. He made a pass in the game against Edmonton that resulted indirectly, I would say, I mean, somewhat directly, but somewhat indirectly, in Edmonton's game-winning goal. Obviously, the score is tied 1-1 in the 3rd period. Brennan Othmann has the puck behind the Edmonton net. He tries to make a backhand pass up the boards to the point, and it was a really nice play by the Edmonton defender. Deflects the pass. Edmonton goes the other way, and you have that goal scored by Arvidsson there, where Jones tried to, make a play on the puck, and it deflected off of his stick and went into the net. And I feel like that might be why Brennan Othmann ended up being a healthy scratch in this game. Do you think for 2 seconds that certain veteran players on this Ranger team, if they made the exact same mistake or an even worse mistake in that same spot in that game and it led to a goal, do you really think any of those guys are coming out of the lineup? Do you think Mika Zibanejad's coming out of the lineup? Do you think Keandre Miller is coming out of the lineup? Any of these guys, Alexi Lafreniere, do you think he's coming out of the lineup? I can't really use Kreider as an example because we actually did see him as a healthy scratch earlier this year. But again, there does seem to be a double standard. And I just don't understand why Othmann has to pay the price for this when other players who have made more mistakes, more glaring mistakes, more flagrant mistakes pretty much the entire season, they go along scot-free. And in some cases, they actually get promoted. They end up getting more ice time, more, better position in the lineup with better players. We saw that last night. Chris Kreider was out there just skating around like he's at an open skate, and he ends up getting promoted later in the game. But once again, I am getting a little bit ahead of myself. We're going to get to all that stuff in just a second. I just wanted to go ahead and call out the Rangers for, once again, mismanaging another prospect. Stop me if you've heard that before, right? And here we go again with this stuff. in the next game, either get Othman in the lineup and get him some ice time, especially after this performance by the veteran players. Get him in the lineup and get him some ice time, or send him to the AHL and at least let him get to keep playing hockey and keep building his confidence and basically build him up for next season. But that part of our rant today, this is basically just going to be one rant. We're just going to jump from one thing to the next. But in just a second, we're going to shift our attention to this actual game. The Rangers' complete and utter lack of compete. Their complete refusal to defend the slot the entire night and basically just hang Igor Shesterkin out to dry. We will get to all that in just a second.
Did you know getting a good night's sleep is the #1 recipe for long-term success in life? I didn't. It took me way longer to realize than I'd like to admit. It was years of tossing and turning. I was always tired. I never felt like I could live up to my potential, but not anymore. Thanks to Bear Mattress. I used their sleep quiz and I matched with the Elite Hybrid. It's perfect for side sleepers like me. Now I wake up energized. I'm getting deeper sleeps and I'm ready to attack the day. No matter how you sleep, Bear Mattress has a match for you with a focus on recovery, cooling, and pressure relief to upgrade your sleep and improve your overall quality of life. Go to bearmattress.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL at checkout for 40% off site-wide. This offer is not available anywhere else. You have to use my promo code on the very last page of checkout to get this discount. That's bearmattress.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 40% off site-wide. Bearmattress.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL.
All right, so a big thank you to all of you who are the everydayers and who obviously have endured a heck of a season here by the New York Rangers and have put up with this every step of the way, just as I have. Huge shout out to you guys as always. In our next episode, where we'll be breaking down whatever happens between the Rangers and the Toronto Maple Leafs. They play each other at 7 p.m. at the Garden on. Go ahead and keep our attention on this game here against the Flames. Once again, another candidate for worst loss, most embarrassing loss, biggest non-compete loss of the season. Call it whatever you want to call it. It was an absolutely miserable performance by this team, and we're going to call them out the way that they deserve to be called out after whatever that was last night. By the way, the Flames, for anybody wondering, and they did make a point of this during the broadcast, Steve Valiquette was talking about this during the postgame as well. The Calgary Flames were on the second game of a back-to-back. They were playing their backup goalie. They had lost the night before 6-3 to the Toronto Maple Leafs. They then had to fly to New York and didn't get there until either 2 or 3 in the morning. There were some conflicting reports there, but bottom line, very, very late. And hey, when you get there, you're not asleep yet, right? I don't know how much sleep any of these guys got the night before. You still got to get to the hotel and everything. You would have thought, though, that that was the exact situation that the Rangers were in. The Rangers were the team that looked groggy and just completely asleep at the wheel and just not willing to compete in any way, shape, or form. One other thing that I'll mention here real quick. I'm going to make a deal with all of you because I know there's been some people that have been talking about, let go of the playoffs. That's not going to happen. I'm going to do my best to stop talking about the playoffs at this point because, yes, mathematically, the Rangers are still in it. And it wasn't that long ago where the Rangers actually had the second wild card. And that was even factoring in games in hand as far as teams trailing them was concerned. The bottom line, they were there, and now they're not there. And in no way, shape, or form does this look like a playoff team. They have lost 6 out of 8 games. They've been largely awful during that stretch. They've played 4 recent games against bubble playoff teams in the NHL, including this game against the Flames last night. They are 1-3 in those 4 games, and the 3 losses have all been in absolutely horrific fashion for different reasons for all 3 of those games. For last night, again, it was the just complete and utter lack of compete. But I propose this question to you guys. Does this look like a playoff team to anybody? I mean, at this point, you wouldn't even really want them to get in because it would validate all their BS from all this season. And deep down, I still would like them to make it, but in no way are they deserving of being a playoff team. So unless the Rangers either win 3 games in a row, which they haven't done in 4 months, by the way, or they get themselves back into a place where they actually have the second wild card spot, I'm done talking about the playoffs because we care more than they do. And as far as scoreboard watching is concerned, I tweeted this out last night too. There's no point in scoreboard watching when your team never wins. What is there to find? one of these other teams, two of these other teams are going to win. I mean, you're going to get buried before you can even figure out what happened when you do nothing but lose. And that's what the Rangers have been doing recently. But let's go ahead and turn our attention, like I said, to the actual action of this game. So, or lack of action on the Rangers' part. There were more instances than you could possibly count in this game where the Rangers just forgot to defend the slot or flat out refuse to defend the slot. This was an absolute epidemic in this game for a team that hasn't exactly been known for its strong defense this season. They took it to a whole nother level of just not competing and not being in the right position and just being flat out bad when it comes to the defensive effort. There were a couple of shots from the Flames early in this game, right from the slot, a couple of fantastic saves by Igor Shesterkin early in this game, had to make a really tough pad save on the one. And you're already worried because you know how this team fails to defend in just so many games. And already you're off to this kind of start. And what a tone setter this turned out to be. Like I said, the Flames didn't score here, but then this just continued and continued and continued. There was an instance right after this where Borgen and Miller are both behind the Ranger net, and K'Andre Miller. And there's two Flames there as well. Borgen was at least, fighting for the puck, but K'Andre Miller comes over, gives a little love tap to his opponent, and then they go right by him. You got Frost going right past K'Andre Miller, passing in front to Huberdeau. Igor has to make another ridiculous save. The Ranger defense were just absolutely brutal in this game. Just absolutely unacceptable. Nothing even slightly salvageable. All six of them. They were all terrible. Terrible. Then you got this play, and this kind of sums everything up as far as how it's gone for Chris Kreider this season. The Rangers actually get the puck into the offensive zone, and he tries to do this no-look pass back to the point to Zach Jones, and he misses him, and the puck goes out of the zone, and you see Kreider kind of like throw his head back in exasperation. Chris, maybe look at where you're passing and don't just throw a no-look blind pass back to the point. I mean, I don't know. Am I off there? That was atrocious. And then we get more refusing to defend the slot. You have a situation here where the Flames score to tie the game at 1-1. They dump the puck up the left side along the boards there. It goes around the net to the opposite corner. There is not a Ranger on the ice that follows the puck. Connor Zary eventually picks it up for the Flames. There's not a Ranger within 10 feet of him, and nobody's even moving toward him. So he can basically do whatever he wants. There's a couple of passes made by the Flames. Then you've got a shot that goes wide. It bounces out in front of the net. And there are the Flames. Kadri's there to bury the rebound. The Flames actually got an initial shot here that was denied by Igor, and then Kadri buried the rebound. But there's nobody on the Rangers that's on their toes, nobody that's trying to defend this area in front of the Ranger net. And what do you think is going to happen? You just keep doing this over and over and over and over again. Igor Shesterkin was absolutely fantastic in this game. He's the only Ranger that I think should even be allowed to look himself in the mirror after this game is over. But he's not Superman, okay? Sooner or later, you're going to allow some goals. And when you continue, the Rangers, to leave the front of your net completely unguarded and not challenge any opposing player in the slightest when they set up shop there, this is what's going to happen. Sooner or later, the dam is going to break and they're going to score. And the same thing basically happened when the Flames took the 2-1 lead, what turned out to be the game-winning goal. Rangers are shorthanded here. The Flames win a faceoff. The Rangers never touch the puck here. Couple of passes by the Flames. You've got a goal being scored right from the doorstep. Kadri gets it to Coronado with his back to the net, and he turns around and basically just shoots it and scores. And there's not a single Ranger penalty killer on the ice here that's within 5 feet of him. Trocheck was he was trying to get there. He was closing a little bit, but you leave him wide open, and this is what happens. And I realize they're shorthanded in this instance, but I don't care. Sooner or later, play some defense. This is absolutely ridiculous. And it just continued. It just kept going. You would think eventually there would be some kind of a course correction here, but no, it just kept happening. The Rangers refused to defend the slot. It got so bad that we saw Igor Shesterkin basically throw a check at Connor Zary. And this happened in the third period. This is, again, the Rangers just falling asleep and Zary's going straight to the net. And Igor Shesterkin knocks him down with a check. And Joe had a great comment after this check was made by Igor Shesterkin here. He says that Igor said that nobody else is hitting, so I might as well. And that pretty much sums it up. The Rangers, again, just didn't stick their nose in there, didn't do any kind of defending, just absolutely brutal. And I don't know, man. It's par for the course. It's par for the course because defending the front of the net, that would require some heart, some grit, some energy, some fight. And the Rangers have now spent 69 games showing us and telling us that that's not who they are. They're just not going to do that. You get the odd strong game every now and then. You get the odd stretch every once in a while where the Rangers win 3 out of 4 or something like that. And you think, oh, maybe things are turning around here a little bit. Nope, never happens. They just never really get it rolling this season. They don't have it in them for some reason or another. I don't know if it's the way that the offseason was handled. I don't know if it's the players that are no longer here. I don't know if this Ranger team, these players are just wired to quit on their coach in year 2. But for one reason or another, this Ranger team just doesn't have it. They just don't have it. They're not willing to fight. They're not willing to compete at the level that you need to fight and compete at if you want to be a playoff team in this league. So in just a second, going to shift our attention to what I found to be the most infuriating part of this game, and that is the Rangers' response, or rather their complete lack of response to JT Miller getting speared, basically, where the sun doesn't shine at the end of the second period. Their follow-up in the second period to seeing that happen at the end of the first period, not to mention just their overall bad play in the first period, was an absolute disgrace, an absolute embarrassment, and we are going to break that down in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. You got to stay in the action because with tournament games happening almost every day, there is always something exciting to bet on. You can pick your favorites. You probably have your eye on a couple of underdogs this year, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. It's easy and fast. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, let's go and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. What I felt was the most disgraceful aspect of this entire performance is the lack of compete, the lack of fire, the lack of energy in the second period, particularly, well, for two reasons, really. The first period was so bad that you would think that maybe somebody would speak up a little bit. These guys would get the message. They would bring a little bit more effort in the second period. That didn't happen. But also the way that the first period ended, because in the final minute there, probably like the final 30 seconds, whatever it was, we had a situation where JT Miller was slashed below the belt and he was doubled over in pain, was able to make his way to the bench. Nothing was called by the referees on this play. Matt Rempe, by the way, would have been given a 20-game suspension for this. But as far as like the referees, missing a call here or there, that is the absolute least of our problems after a game like this. So I'm certainly not going to put this one on the Zebras. But you had Mika Zibanejad confronting the referee at the end of the first period. A lot of emotion here from Mika and seemed pretty fired up about this and was telling him it's your fault. So nice to see a little bit of intensity from Mika. And I'm thinking at this point, okay, like terrible first period. This is what the Rangers do, though. They can't play 60 full minutes. This game is still very much within their reach. They'll come back a little bit better in the second period. I don't know why I thought that. Maybe I was having flashbacks to what this team would do if this was last season, but there was none of that. It was the exact opposite. They were somehow even worse in the second period after what was a putrid first period. The Rangers had a grand total in the first period of 5 shots on goal. And as a quick aside, let me ask you guys a question. How many times has that happened this season? How many games do we have to watch the Rangers go out there and basically be stuck in first gear for just about the entire first period, if not the entire first period? How many games do we have to watch with this team where, we get to 10 minutes into the game, 12 minutes into the game, and the Rangers have 1 shot on goal, 2 shots on goal. How many games do we have to watch where we get to the end of the first period and the Rangers have like 4 or 5 shots on goal? How many games do we have to watch where we get to the end of the second period and the Rangers have about 10 shots on goal? And for the record, and a lot of you guys I'm sure are very aware of this, because the amount of just damning and incriminating stats on the Rangers in this game is just through the roof, to the point that I can't possibly get to all of them. But the one that I think really sums it up is the fact that they concluded this game with a grand total of 13 shots on goal. And again, to stick with this theme of how bad the first period was as we set the stage for the second period, the first period saw the Rangers give the puck away 11 times. They had 0 takeaways. At the end of this game, do you know what the ratio here was as far as giveaways to takeaways? I'll give you just a quick second here to get a number in your head. Think to yourself, how many giveaways for the Rangers and how many takeaways for the Rangers? Are you ready? Are you sitting down? If you're driving, maybe pull over to the side of the road for a quick second. The Rangers at the end of this game had a grand total of 20 giveaways, 1 takeaway. 20 giveaways, 1 takeaway. We have a Locked On New York Rangers fantasy league. It's myself and 19 of our most loyal listeners, the everydayers that tune in for this every single day and put up with this brand of Ranger hockey every single day of the week, 5 days a week, every week. If we put the 20 of us onto the ice, we would have only had 1 fewer takeaway than this Ranger team did. It's incredible to think about, really. You have to try to be that bad. You have to show absolutely no fight. I mean, nobody on this Ranger team trying to get the puck away from the Flames the entire night. Let's just let Igor Shesterkin save our butts time and time and time again. But I mentioned the shots on goal. Do you know how many shots on goal the Rangers had in the second period? And again, keep in mind, this is their response to an abysmal first period. And the Flames, I don't care if it was intentional or not, somebody got JT Miller with his stick where the sun doesn't shine. Okay, I'm keeping that as PG as I possibly can, but I gotta let everybody know what happened here. So what was their response? How many shots on goal in the second period? 2. 2 shots on goal, and not a single shot on goal by any of the Ranger forwards for the entire second period. Absolutely brutal. That's their response. And you know, it should be surprising. If it was last season, it would be surprising. This year, even by the standards the Rangers have set, I'm still a little surprised. But I shouldn't be. None of us should be. We've all watched this team all season. We know what they're about. You think that a teammate getting, injured and borderline cheap shotted at the end of the first period is going to light a fire under this team? You think it's going to spark them? The only guy that it seemed to spark was JT Miller himself, because at least JT, during a play stoppage, the Flames goalie froze the puck, and he goes over there and he's kind of poking away at the puck with his stick. He knew what he was doing. He knew the Flames were basically going to jump him when he was doing this, because obviously, whether it's the Rangers, Flames, or anybody else, nobody likes it when you mess with their goalie. But JT Miller did that on purpose. That was a calculated move by JT Miller to get the Flames to come after him so he could fight back a little bit. The other Rangers could get drawn into the scrum as well. And maybe, just maybe, this will get the team going at least a little bit. But it didn't. I mean, the scrum happened and there were matching minors. And that was pretty much the end of it. That was the long and short of it. There was a bunch of other nonsense in the second period, too. I mean, we're just scratching the surface here, really. The second period starts with Braden Schneider flipping the puck over the boards for basically no reason. He's in his own zone. There's nobody anywhere near him. I know he's trying to lift the puck out of the zone, but you didn't have to do that here. You weren't under any pressure. And I realize these guys have to make split-second decisions, but no reason for that. Another mental mistake. This team is a walking, talking mental mistake. That's basically what they've been the entire season. Just miscue after miscue. All these instances where guys don't have their heads in the game. Why do you think they lead the NHL in too many men on the ice penalty? And why do you think they take penalties like this, where they flip the puck up and out of play over the boards for a delay game penalty when there's no pressure? There was no reason for this to happen. And then you get more nonsense in the second period. I mean, it's just one thing after the next. You get Alexis Lafreniere. Funny that we're saying his name, right? We haven't really been able to talk about him too much other than when we're calling him out for being invisible, because he never does anything positive anymore. But he has just a completely unnecessary, just out to lunch offensive zone tripping penalty in the second period here. The penalties with this team are completely out of control. Just another sign of a really bad team. Really bad teams take a bunch of penalties, and they take a bunch of penalties that there is no reason to take. We saw it with Braden Schneider. Now here, we see it with Alexis Lafreniere. And then the Rangers get a power play. By the way, the power play down to number 25 in the league. They are in the bottom quarter of the league with the same players that were here last season, plus JT Miller. You would think that that would be a good power play unit. What were they, number 3 last year? Couldn't do anything on the power play in this game. And they are every bit as bad on the power play as that number 25 ranking would suggest. This power play, I mean, Kreider with just a horrendous turnover along the boards. They can't even gain the zone. When they finally do, it immediately gets cleared. And this is where the booing started. It started with the Rangers on the power play here. And keep in mind, the Ranger fans are booing this team in a situation where the Rangers are only down by a goal. They never trailed by more than a goal in this game. But that's how bad the Rangers were, and that's how deceptive that 1-goal difference was in this game. So they're hearing the boos here. Then you get a situation where the power play ends mercifully. The Rangers have a better chance of scoring shorthanded than they do on the power play. And that is not an exaggeration right now. They actually do get the odd scoring chance when they're shorthanded. The power play looks absolutely lost. And the power play ends, and Pospisil gets a breakaway because, oopsie doodle, we forgot to cover the guy coming out of the penalty box. Again, another mental mistake by this team in the second period that basically had a bunch of guys that looked like they would rather be anywhere else in the world last night than playing hockey for the New York Rangers. But it's another breakaway, and he goes in alone. Igor Shesterkin makes the save, and play continues. Igor on this play loses his stick. It goes into the corner. Do you think anybody on the Rangers thought to give Igor their stick? Or do you think anybody on the Rangers thought to go and get Igor's stick and bring it back to him? And there was an opportunity to do that because the puck came out of the zone. It's not like the Flames were swarming here and, firing all these shots on net and the opportunity just wasn't there. The opportunity was there, but these Ranger players are so out to lunch and or so lazy that they never got Igor's stick, and none of them ever gave Igor their own stick. And Igor had to make a save without his stick and froze the puck and then was able to go get it himself. Even when the play stopped, none of the Ranger teammates went over to get Igor Shesterkin's stick. This guy is standing on his head doing gymnastics, basically, to keep you in the game, which you do not deserve to be in this game at all. But he's making phenomenal save after phenomenal save after phenomenal save. You can't even be bothered during the play or after the play to go get this guy's stick. Are you kidding me? Absolutely disgraceful. Disgraceful. And guess what else? The third period sucked too. How about that? How's that for a summary of the third period? The third period sucked too. It was absolutely atrocious. You have the same situations here where the Rangers do what they always do. They're down by a goal, and it's the same guys on the ice at the end of the game every single time. They put Chris Kreider on the ice at the end of the game. Kreider was atrocious in this game. He had no business being on the ice. Now, the one thing you could maybe say in Laviolette's defense for this is that nobody on this Ranger team really deserved to be on the ice in that situation in the game. I still think he could have found somebody better than Kreider for what he gave for this Ranger team last night, but nobody really deserved it. And I actually got a little bit ahead of myself. I want to back up to something that happened with about 4.5 minutes to go in the third period. This is when Will Cooley dumped the puck into the offensive zone, and the Flames go off and change, and you've got Anderson, who was driving the Rangers crazy all night. He comes away with the puck from behind the Calgary net, and then he just stands there, in the Calgary zone with the puck, not moving, not looking to pass, not looking to advance the puck. He's standing there for a good solid 10 or 15 seconds before somebody on the Rangers realize, oh, we have to go after the puck. We're down by a goal here. We have to try to score. That little 10 or 15 second window there summed up Ranger hockey this season better than I possibly can. Just complete laziness, complete out to lunchness, and just no situational awareness in this spot in the game. You are trailing. Start being a little bit more aggressive. Start going after the puck. Start attacking a little bit. And instead, the Rangers are just sitting back in the neutral zone, waiting for Anderson to come to them. And eventually somebody, it might have been Lafreniere, finally realized what was happening and actually entered the offensive zone and forced Anderson to do something with the puck. But, that just sums it up perfectly. It sums up this game perfectly. It sums up this season perfectly. And what do the players have to say about this performance when the game is over? How do they respond? You have no fewer than 3, 4, 5 different Rangers openly admitting that they didn't show up tonight. Now, I guess on one hand, if you give this team credit for nothing else, and you shouldn't give them credit for anything else, but you can at least say, well, they were honest. They were honest about it. But man, how is that for a quote at this time of the year when you're in theory fighting for your lives? See, I didn't say the P word there. I've kept my promise so far. When you're in theory fighting for your lives, you don't show up, and then you admit as much after the game. Keandre Miller said something like biggest game of the season, and we didn't show up. Yeah, you didn't. None of you did. Then you had this just $1 million quote from Mika Zibanejad. And right when you start to think that things are getting a little bit better for Mika Zibanejad, and I realize that's a very low bar due to how this guy performed for basically, I'd say the whole first half of the season, maybe the whole first 2/3 of the season. I realize it's a very low bar, but Mika has been better recently. But then you get, like I said, this $1 million quote at the end of the night. This is what he says. It's frustrating, really frustrating. I don't care if we play like that and we win. If we lose and we play like that, it's not acceptable. Mika, it's not acceptable even if you win. Does he really think this? Does he really think like this? Do the Rangers really have this collective mentality? Like, let's take a hypothetical here. Let's say that the Rangers win this game 1-0. Panarin scored like 2 minutes into the game, whatever it was, put the Rangers up 1-0. Igor basically went into God mode the rest of the game, made all these ridiculous saves, but he led into the Rangers lost 2-1. Let's say Igor was even better in this game, and let's say that he actually pitched a shutout, and the Rangers, completely in spite of themselves, ended up winning this game 1-0. That makes it okay. That makes a performance like this okay for Mika Zibanejad and the rest of these Rangers skaters. They're okay with this kind of performance. They're okay with just throwing their goalie under the bus, basically, and just saying, it's on you tonight, dude, because we're not going to help you. That's okay. That's acceptable. The only thing I can possibly come up with is that maybe Mika's just pointing out the fact that, like, okay, you got to win this time of the year and you'll take 2 points any way you can get it. That's not good enough. I'm sorry. You cannot be satisfied with this performance if you win, even if you do win. You know, it was abysmal. It was atrocious. And the only reason why the Rangers stayed in this game was because of Igor Shesterkin. But it is absolutely horrifying to me to think that Mika Zibanejad and maybe some other guys in that locker room too would have been completely fine, completely happy, completely content, completely satisfied with this very same performance if Igor had somehow managed to get a shutout. And they won this game, once again, completely in spite of themselves. That's an absolutely horrifying thought. And I think it speaks volumes about where things are with Mika Zibanejad and the rest of this sorry bunch of players, if we're being completely honest here. You also had, I talked about this on and off throughout the entire episode, but you had Ranger fans booing during this game. I don't blame them one bit. I would have joined right in. And I'm usually the fan that wants to be positive and wants to get, behind these guys and let's spur them on. Let's try to get them to a win. They didn't show up for the fans. They didn't show up for each other. So why should the fans show up for the players? Why should the fans not have that kind of a response? Honestly, if anything, they probably deserve more booing than what they got during this game. It got really loud during the second period when the Rangers were atrocious. I think what might have saved the Rangers a little bit in the third period from the booing is the fact that, once again, this was still a game. You still got a couple of faint let's go Rangers chants with 10 minutes left, with 5 minutes left, with the Rangers, in theory, trying to tie the game. And the fans were still trying to get into it. They were still trying to will these guys on. That's better than these players deserved for this game. They should have been booing the entire way through. They should have been booing louder when the game ended. And they should keep booing them the rest of the season if this is what the Rangers are going to show every single night. Okay. What else? Is there anything else? They did a nice tribute to Tomas Klocek at the beginning of this game. That was probably the nicest thing that happened in that building this entire game. We talked about Klocek in our last episode. I give the Rangers props for, giving him a nice little moment of silence, and that they had his image on the big screen there as well. So obviously, just a tragedy. And again, my heart goes out to anybody affected by that. It was also Women's Empowerment Night at Madison Square Garden. So this is at least the second time this season where the Rangers have completely no-showed one of their theme nights. And I know this because I remember talking about the Garden of Dreams night. That was another classic New York Ranger no-show, and I really took exception with that one because you're talking about like underprivileged kids and kids that need help, and this is their game and this is their night, and you go out there and completely no-show the entire thing. And hey, here's another theme night that the Rangers no-show, that they just don't feel like competing, don't feel like playing hockey. An absolutely disgraceful performance. All right, so we'll call it there. If you guys would like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, at jchick17. Once again, at jchik17. And definitely subscribe to the Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.